hanging pawns understand the pawn structure in this situation can be crucial for playing much better. Hanging pawns is what you see here on this board. It's where the pawns have gone sort of sailing away, and they are standing beside each other, and actually there are open files here where white can attack them. And you have usually, when you have hanging pawns, you also have an isolated pawn. The thing is, it's a very dynamic situation where you will also see that black has different options of moving the pawns. He has open B file, he has an open E file, and it's very complex strategic situation. Ulf Anderson famously said that he preferred much more to have an isolated pawn than hanging pawns, because when you have a hanging pawns and you lose one of the pawns, then you have an isolated pawn and are behind with a pawn, so then you're really in trouble. And that's of course correct, that it is with certain strategic risk, but there's also big merits to hanging pawns. You can sense it. You have more space, and they have dynamic potential. Sometimes they can move forward here. So this will be a short masterclass. I don't know, maybe 4 to 5 videos on the hanging pawns structure. Hopefully it will supplement the isolated queen pawn masterclass, and maybe even the Carlsberg masterclass. By the way, I'm using some of my own material, but I'm also using this book, so I should recommend it. It also I didn't use that actually, and a chapter on isolated queen pawn position. Ivan Sokolov is an absolutely outstanding teacher and excellent author, and I can definitely recommend this book. So it's not to steal his material, it's just to use some of it, being a little bit inspired by it, and I hope you will buy the book. You will definitely learn a lot. It's a great book, and he is a very impressive chess thinker. He's also behind players like Fischer and so on, so he of course knows what he's doing. But for instance, I remember when I got my FIDE trainer license, Ivan Sokolov had one of the lectures, and it was actually by far the best there was there. Anyway, but there were some good lectures actually. Anyway, let's get into it. We're gonna see the all-time classic, one of the games you really need to know with hanging pawns, and that's of course Boris getting crushed by Bobby Fischer in Reykjavik. It's game 6, and I think this was the determining game. After this, Boris didn't really recover. Fischer, of course, was an E4 player, and suddenly he played C4. Well, and but it was not, of course, not a surprise for him that Spassky was playing the Queen's Gambit with black. He has been playing this for his whole life. It's this tactical variation was also known as the Bondarevsky variation and something. And I think Spassky was trained by this Bondarevsky guy. And this is the tactical variation, B6. You can say that if you go knight D7, it's the Kramnik line, and you can go knight E4, which is the Lasker defense, which is also very solid. B6 is strategically more interesting than the other options. I think it leads to very interesting play, and often it leads to hanging pawns. By the way, hanging pawns are all the rage right now, because in a lot of Nimzo-Indian variations at the moment, black seems to get hanging pawns. So it will be smart to know this structure. Back then it was 72. They took here. Nowadays that's not considered to be the most critical variation. I think there are many more lines I think they played mostly bishop e2 in the queen in the many matches against Karpov and Kasparov. By the way, something like this and so on. But this, of course, is possible. But black can take with the knight, which is something you usually would not like. And here, And of course, if you do something normal, black will just develop. C5, have a nice down position. So black, white hurries to do this. And you can say this is a sort of a Carlsbad structure, but with this pawn here, which means this square is much weaker. So black does not have his usual solid wall of pawns here, where you would say that he would probably be fine here. But the pawn on b6 is a serious weakness of the dark squares. So black usually, and by the way, the Tartakova is not meant to be static, it's meant to be dynamic. So they play it much more dynamic. Now with when the pawn has been exchanged, there's no reason to put the bishop here where it would just be passive sitting into the pawn. It might as well go here where it might be active later on the king side, or actually on the queen side. So bishop b6 is much better. Queen a4, trying to control some squares on the queen side. c5, and black willingly go into the hanging pawns. And we're gonna have a lot of discussion about, are these hanging pawns strong or weak or whatever. It's not so simple, to be honest, what's going on with this hanging pawn. So black does have a majority on the queen side, which can be interesting, but sometimes white can also blow the pawns up, which we will see in this game. There are different ways to blow the pawns up. One of them is we will see in a moment. Here he plays this move. This move was a novelty and praised and so on. And it's turned out afterwards it's not that good. Geller found a solution. Here the best move for black is to play dynamically. And the funny thing is, I'm looking at the chess base notes here, and they don't have this move. Well, they have the move, but they don't have the right line. You should not play a6 like Spassky did, weakening the queen side. You should play this move. And the idea is simply to go here, here, and here, and here, and black will take over the board. Because the pin is gone, and after something like this, black has this move, which is gives him very, very dynamic possibilities. I think Geller won a very fast game with this line. The tricky point is this move. You take, and here you play this move, hitting the pawn, and if he defends the pawn, then he cannot go to d1. So after something like this, you go here and you have this move, and you are winning. So this queen b7 refutes this. It's white is definitely not better in that situation, and they stopped playing this line for white. But back then they didn't know that, and they didn't have computers and stuff. So he played a6 and take and take. And castle and rook a7. That was annoying pin, and so it makes it nice to both cover the rook and getting ready to threaten here. We can take a little bit of stock. We say that white has different options in these situations. Sometimes he get away with b4 to get this square. Sometimes you get away with e4 to get this square, and we can see from these situations that they are a bit fragile. These pawns, they are giving space. They are in the center. They can become queens, but they can also become very weak, and they're not very sort of robust to different things. They can easily come under attack and when they have to move, they instantly weakens each other. You can see that if this moves, you give up all the black squares, and if this move, you give up all the white squares. So it's a double-edged sword. But the dynamic potentials of these pawns, and that we'll see in later games, is also interesting. That sometimes you can play d4 and launch a strong attack and so on. And in general, some players are very bad at playing against hanging pawns, so it can be a good weapon to have to know these structures. And here, I don't know what black should play. I think he's always slightly worse. White is probably just threatening something like this and here. So instead he played Basket played this move, defending the pawn. But now the queen is not defended anymore here. So which gives white a possibility to improve the position of the knight. And it comes here. It can go here, and it can take this one. And we're going to look a little bit about that. And here, Spassky made a clear mistake. He played way too passively. I think he probably should play, I don't know, knight f6 or something, and be okay, almost. I think I prefer white. It's much. The thing is with it's much easier to put pressure on the pawns than it is to make them dynamic in general. So that makes it's demanding to play with double pawns, with hanging pawns. You have to play really accurately, and if you make a mistake, you lose one of the pawns and you lose the game. And and in general, you have to play brilliantly to win. But it doesn't mean that the structure is bad. It just means that it's probably easier to play with one color than the other. He played this move, and the rest is very instructive. It's also, I think, rather easy for a player like Fischer. Takes this one, and here comes, and we say, oh, black just improved his position. Now they're not hanging anymore. This is, by the way, a very common sort of trade, but this move is nice, and that's of course pure pawn sacrifice. You are so, but to take this one is, and we look at these situation here. And in a situation like this, what often happens is black loses all the pawns. Even though a computer says it's okay, it's only plus 4, plus 0 point, half point, half pawn or something. But for a human, they will probably lose all the pawns, and then you'll be behind with with something like 3 pawns, because they are really difficult to defend, and this one is really good, and all these, they are all isolated and weak. Instead, he played d4. That was definitely a mistake. Just surrendering more or less the white squares and giving white an easy way to play. The best move is knight f6, but after something like this, we also see that white is pressing here. It will not be. You cannot put the pawns on any squares where they will not be attacked, and this is of course much better position for the bishop than the knight. They are all weak, the pawns, and well, not fun to play, not fun at all. But he played d4, and you can just sense this is a disaster. And white goes f4. There's not gonna be any blockade here or something like that. And a5, and we got this one pegged down, meaning this one, this guy here will rule the day on the white squares. And bishop here. And you can have that one. If I get this one, then I'm gonna roll these all the way down. So and just covering here, and black's position is hopeless. By the way, it's kind of instructive how white wins. We're gonna see it's a little bit slow. This kind of, you have to know how to play this with white. So you basically keep your bishop very dominant, and then you try to push your pieces as actively as possible, and improve the position as much as possible before you launch the attack on the white squares. A5 and f5. Nasty move, of course, threatening this move. There's no reason to try and do this, because this is just marvelous for white. This one is it's like a laser. It's actually threatening this. But of course, a little trick. If you go here, whoops. So, but of course you're not going there. Another one comes in here, and getting out of the knight d5 things. Rook come here, Okay, stopping knight e5 altogether, and e6. Okay, we are ready for something like this. We are also ready for this. So the rook is very strong here. And queen here. There's also this stuff. It's nice. And you can try and run with the pawn, but it's just gonna get snatched off the board. So, and a4, just saying, okay, you're completely helpless. And by the way, if something, if the knight ever comes out, you just chop it off and win. The rooks are too passive to defend here. This bishop is stronger than a rook. And very typical, just saying, okay, no defend, no counterplay for you. Okay, and okay, it's time to switch. So we're getting ready for this move, and down here, and if he takes, comes this move, and black will be mated. So this move, and of course, yes, this is very easy. You can say that black is the rooks are very, very bad defenders in these kind of situations. Here, threatening this move, and here, and all over. Very, very, very nice game by Fischer. Spassky did not look like he had a chance, and after this, the World Championship match was, well, more or less over. This was a really hard blow, just feeling like you don't belong there. I would have felt that way with black. But Fischer was very, very strong at that point. Clearly the best player in the world. So it was fair. He won the match, but it's still tough to lose, especially this way. This was the beginning of the Hanging Pawns masterclass. Gonna be a small masterclass, not like 10 videos, but maybe more like 5. And here we saw a classic game to get us started, a little bit about the ideas, and the key thing to take away, it was this transformation. This is very typical stuff you have to look for in these situations. We also see this is a very typical Fischer thing, that he's very good at making his bishop much better than the knight. This was GM Talks. Thank you for watching.